When I was on a business trip, my parents sold my house to fund my brother's vacation. My dad smirked, "Your house paid for their fun." I just smiled. He screamed, "Why are you so calm?" My answer destroyed him. My name is Brina Myers. I'm a structural engineer. I'm 33 years old. And the week my own parents forged my signature on a real estate deed and sold the only home I ever truly loved, I was standing on a bridge deck 8,000 miles away in Portugal, holding a tension gauge, with a timestamp on the photo to prove it. I found out the way you find out about most catastrophes, not from the people who caused them, but from a neighbor. Cora Hines, retired school teacher, 71 years old, who had watched me grow up from the kitchen window of the house next door. She sent me a single photograph and 3 words. "Is this real?" I was standing in a hotel coffee line in Lisbon when I opened it. The cup never made it to my mouth. There was my house, white clapboard siding, green door, my grandfather's porch swing just visible at the frame's edge, his initials burned into the armrest in letters I could have traced blind, and staked in the front lawn, right in the patch of dirt where Walter Hale used to grow his tomatoes, was a real estate sign with a bright red rider bolted across the top. Sold, not for sale, not coming soon, sold, past tense, finished. I typed back with hands that didn't feel like mine. "I'm in Portugal. I didn't list it." Cora's reply came in under a minute. "Honey, the moving truck was here Saturday. Your mother was directing it." I set the coffee down. I walked back to my room. I opened my laptop. Because whatever had just happened, it had left a paper trail. And paper trails are the one language my family never learned to speak. I have never stopped speaking it. Part 1. The house that was always mine. People think structural engineers are cold. We're not. We just trust things that hold weight, and most people don't. I built my whole life that way. One verified load at a time. No shortcuts, no help I didn't earn. Every calculation checked twice. Every beam confirmed before you put your name on it. It is a discipline that makes you very good at your job and occasionally very lonely at holidays. But I had made my peace with that trade. The one place I let myself be soft was a small clapboard house on Mill Road. My grandfather, Walter Hale, bought it in 1971 and spent 50 years making it perfect with his own hands. He was a carpenter by trade and a philosopher by temperament, the kind of man who distrusted banks, loved paperwork, and believed that the 2 most important things a person could own were a good level and a clear conscience. He taught me to read a level before I could read a clock. He taught me that a beam carries load and a person carries promises, and that the difference between a good structure and a failed one is almost always the detail that somebody was too lazy to check. When I graduated with my engineering degree, he pressed his brass front door key into my palm at the ceremony and closed my fingers over it. "A house," he said, "is just a promise you keep to yourself." I kept that key on my ring for 11 years. Mill Road was not grand. 2 bedrooms, a deep front porch, a kitchen that smelled like sawdust and coffee no matter how many times I scrubbed it, some ghost of Walter's decades embedded in the wood. But it was mine in a way nothing else in my family ever was. Not assigned, chosen. My mother got the china, my brother got the attention, I got the house. For a while, I thought that was the family finally getting something right. Walter died 14 months before any of this. At 84, in his sleep, in the bedroom he had painted 3 times trying to get the white exactly right. The funeral was small and quiet, the way he would have wanted. My mother, Diane, cried the loudest and left the earliest. A week later, his attorney, a careful, measured man named Harold Brandt, called me into his paneled office downtown and slid a folder across the desk. I was 32, exhausted, mid-project, running on bad coffee and grief. Brandt used words I had heard but not processed. Irrevocable trust, successor trustee, beneficiary. I signed where he pointed. I remember thinking, the house is mine now. That's all I need to know. "Read this when you can breathe again," Brandt said, tapping the folder. I didn't. I filed it in a drawer and went back to work, because work was the one thing that never asked how I was holding up. That was my mistake. I own it completely. My mother had said at the reception, in the receiving line where I could hear her, that was Daddy's house. It should have come to me. I let it slide. Grief makes people say things. I told myself that. I believed it. The way you believe things that are easier than the truth. 3 months after the funeral, when my mother offered to keep a spare key for upkeep, "You're never home, dear." I gave it to her without a second thought. When my father, Roger, said he'd watch the place while I traveled, I thanked him. I handed the people who resented me most a set of keys and a head start, and I called it being a good daughter. I had spent my whole life proving I could carry everything alone. It never once occurred to me that the people I trusted most were measuring the house room by room for someone else. Part 2. The Portugal assignment. The project came in March. A cable-stayed bridge retrofit outside Lisbon. 11 weeks on site. The kind of assignment that makes a career. My firm needed someone who wouldn't blink at long hours and longer flights. I said yes before my boss finished the sentence. The week before I flew out, I did what I always did. I made everyone else's life easier. Bills on autopay, a list on the refrigerator in my neat block capitals, the way I label engineering drawings, because if a thing is written down, it cannot go wrong. I showed my parents where the water shutoff was. I gave my father the alarm code. I gave my mother the spare key and felt, for one genuinely warm moment, that maybe losing Walter had softened something in her. "Don't worry about a thing," she said, running her hand along the banister Walter had sanded by hand. "We'll take such good care of it." I hugged her at the door. I believed her. There were things I should have noticed, flags that I cataloged as nothing and filed away. 3 days before I left, my mother asked, too casually, where Walter's house papers were kept. I told her Brant had the originals and I had copies in the drawer. She nodded in a way that suggested it didn't matter. It mattered. Trent called me. My brother Trent, 29 years old, who had not initiated a call with me in over a year. He wanted to talk about the family's finances. In my family, the family's finances has always meant only one thing. Someone wanted money and had already decided it was mine. I told him I was slammed and we'd catch up when I got back. He went quiet in a way that, in hindsight, was not the quiet of acceptance. The week I landed in Lisbon, his social media bloomed with photographs of an overwater bungalow in the Maldives, private chef, turquoise water, a caption that read, "Big things coming." My brother hadn't had a job in 7 months. I frowned at my phone in a hotel that smelled like sea salt and thought, where is he getting that? Then a colleague needed me on the deck for a load reading and I forgot the question. The last thing came as a forwarded text from my mother, an unknown number, a realtor, asking if the owner had given more thought to listing the Mill Road property. I texted back a single word, no. My mother replied with a thumbs up and a heart. I thought the matter was closed. The heart emoji was not agreement. It was a goodbye. Part 3. The photograph. Lisbon swallowed me whole the way good work always does. I was happy in the narrow way I know how to be happy. Useful, exhausted, far from anyone who wanted something from me. The calls home got shorter. My mother was busy. My father was around. Trent never came to the phone. I chalked it up to the time difference and my own bad habit of letting silence feel like peace. Week 6, I called on a Tuesday, off schedule, because a permit delay had freed my evening. My mother picked up on the 9th ring, breathless, with voices behind her. "Now's not great, honey." I asked who was there. She said it was just some people about the yard, that they were handling it. I asked directly if everything was okay with the house. The pause that followed had texture. I could feel the weight of it through the phone. When she spoke again, her voice had gone too bright, too smooth. "Everything is wonderful. You focus on your bridge." She hung up before I could answer. I stood on the hotel balcony with the phone warm against my ear and that engineer's itch crawling up my spine. The one that says a number doesn't add up and you'd better find out why before something fails. I texted Trent. Nothing. I texted my father. Nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. 2 days later, Cora's photograph arrived. My neighbor had watched me grow up from the house next door. She'd babysat me on the nights my parents went out and forgot they'd promised to be back by 9. She'd brought soup when Walter died. She was the kind of person who appears at the moments when the world needs to be witnessed by someone honest. Is this real? And there it was. My house. The sold sign in Walter's tomato patch. I typed, "Are you sure that's my house?" She replied, "Honey, the moving truck was here Saturday. Your mother was directing it. A moving truck. My things. Walter's things. The level he taught me to read. The kitchen cabinet he'd built himself from reclaimed oak. The porch swing with WH 1971 burned into the armrest. Into a truck. Gone. I want to tell you I screamed. I didn't. Something in me went very still and very quiet, the way it does on a job site the second before everyone realizes the load calculation is wrong. That particular terrible stillness that precedes catastrophe. I set the coffee down. I walked to my room and I opened my laptop, because a house cannot be sold by people who don't own it. I knew that the way I know steel. Either I was wrong about who owned my home, or someone had put my name on a document I had never touched. I called my mother before I called the county. Some childish, hopeful part of me still wanted there to be an explanation. She answered on the second ring, eager. "Brina, how's Lisbon?" Like nothing. Like the world hadn't tilted on its axis. "Mom," I kept my voice very even. "Why is there a sold sign on Mill Road?" The silence had texture. Then she laughed. Light, brittle, practiced. "Oh, that. We meant to tell you. It all happened so fast. 11 weeks of we're handling it had happened so fast. Tell me what happened," I said. "Honey, the market was perfect. We got a wonderful price. Your brother needed—" She caught herself. "The family needed this. You were never even there. That house was just sitting empty. Who signed the sale?" Another pause. Then, brightly, "Don't get bogged down in details. It's done. It's wonderful." In the background, I heard Trent's voice. Careless, loud, the way he's always been when consequences are still abstract. "Tell her the villa has 2 pools. 2 pools. My grandfather's house, 50 years of his hands in every wall, had become 2 pools in the Maldives. And my mother said the line she had been rehearsing since the funeral, the one she truly, completely believed. It should have come to me anyway, Brina. I'm just taking back what was mine. I didn't argue. Arguing with my mother has never moved a single inch of ground in my life. Instead, I said, calm as a closing door. Okay, Mom, enjoy the trip. I hung up. Then I opened the county recorder's public portal, and I started to read. Part 4, The Paper Trail. It was 2 a.m, coffee going cold at my elbow. I searched the parcel number I had memorized since the day Walter walked me through it. The record loaded, and there it was. A warranty deed recorded 6 weeks earlier, transferring the Mill Road property to a couple named Prescott. Grantor, Brina L. Myers. A sale I had never heard of, signed by a woman who was on a different continent. I sat very still and read it 4 times. Then I looked at the closing date, April 19th. On April 19th, I had been standing on a bridge deck outside Lisbon in a hard hat, with 30 witnesses and a time-stamped photograph of myself holding a tension gauge at 7:14 in the morning. I had not signed anything in Portugal but a hotel folio and a load certificate. Every signature I had made that week was on engineering documents, in metric units, in a country 6 time zones from home. The signature on the deed read, Brina Elmer Myers, in a looping hand that was not mine. I've signed my name on 10,000 drawings. I know my own hand the way I know my own face. This was a stranger wearing it. The B was close. The flat-topped R I make, the one that looks like a miniature capital letter, was wrong. Someone had studied me, and they had been almost good enough. Almost. Then I found the notary block. Every deed needs one. A notary public who swears, under official commission, that the person signing is who they say they are, and that they stood there and signed in front of them. The stamp on my forged deed belonged to a notary commissioned in our county. The name under the seal was Renee Calloway, my cousin Renee, Diane's niece. 41 years old, perpetually one missed paycheck from disaster, who had gotten her notary commission 2 years ago and never seemed to use it for much. She had sworn under her official seal, the seal that represented her legal authority and her professional reputation, that she had personally witnessed me sign a document I was 8,000 miles away from. I didn't feel rage yet. Rage takes energy, and I needed all of mine for what came next. I felt something flatter and harder, like a beam locking into place. I requested a certified copy of the deed, paid the fee online, and gave my hotel address for overnight delivery. Then I opened a new email thread and began writing down everything I knew, in order, the way you document a failed inspection. Because a screenshot is an accusation, a certified document is a weapon. I was done bringing my voice to a fight my family had already turned into paper. Part 5, The Fence Walter Built. The certified copy arrived 9 days later, forwarded through my office, embossed with the county seal, raised and inked. I waited until the site was quiet to open it, slid the document out on the hotel desk under the lamp and laid it flat. Warranty deed, April 19th, Brina L. Myers, grantor, Prescott family, grantee. I made myself look at the signature, made myself look at Renee's notary stamp, made myself feel the full weight of what had been done because I didn't want to be numb to it. I wanted to be clear-eyed. Then I opened my passport on the desk beside the deed. Lisbon entry stamp, March 11th. No exit stamp until June. I laid my site badge log next to that. April 19th. First scan, 6:47 a.m. Last scan, 7:12 p.m. Portugal. 45 witnesses on payroll that day. Time-stamped photographs of my face beside the bridge instruments. 3 pieces of paper under a hotel lamp telling one clean story that any child could follow. I could not have signed that deed, and the woman who swore I did was lying. I photographed all 3 together, timestamp visible, and emailed them to myself in 2 separate accounts. Then I sat back in the chair and understood, for the first time, what my grandfather had meant on the porch swing that last summer. Lawyers are good for one thing, he'd said, making sure people can't take what isn't theirs. I had thought he was being dramatic. He was being prophetic. First thing in the morning, I called Harold Brandt. He remembered me before I finished my name. Walter's granddaughter, he said. The engineer. He talked about you constantly. There was warmth in his voice that I had to set aside. I told him everything in order. The sold sign, the deed, my forged signature, Renee's stamp, my passport, the badge log. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had sharpened. Brina, he said, do you remember what you signed in my office after the funeral? I admitted I hadn't read it carefully. He didn't scold me. Your grandfather didn't leave you that house in his will, Brandt said. He put it in an irrevocable trust 3 years before he died. The house is owned by the trust. You're the beneficiary and the successor trustee. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed. What does that mean for the sale? I asked. It means, Brandt said slowly, that your parents sold something they never owned. The house was never theirs. It wasn't even yours to sell outright. It belongs to the trust, and you control the trust. Whatever they signed as people with no legal authority over that property whatsoever. I thought of Walter on the porch swing, the oak warm under us in the summer evening, WH 1971 catching the light. He had known. He had sat in this lawyer's office while my mother thought he was just a stubborn old man with an overdeveloped sense of ceremony, and he had quietly, methodically, made it legally impossible for her to do exactly what she had now done. He had built a fence she couldn't climb. He had just never told me it was there. "There's more," Brant said, "and you're going to want to stay sitting down." He explained the protective clause. Walter had instructed him to write a forfeiture provision into the estate plan. Any beneficiary who attempted to take trust property by fraud would forfeit their entire interest in the trust. My mother and brother were each set to inherit from a separate cash trust Walter had established, close to $40,000 apiece. By orchestrating a fraudulent transfer of trust property, Brant said carefully, they had likely triggered the very mechanism their father had built to stop them. "And the deed itself?" I asked. "A deed with a forged signature," he said, "is generally void from inception. Not voidable, void. It conveys nothing, even to an innocent buyer who paid full price and knew nothing. Your family never had title to pass. A forger cannot pass what they don't own." He walked me through the sequence. A lice pendens, a formal notice flagging the disputed title on the public record, freezing any further transaction. Then a quiet title action to have a judge confirm the trust as the true owner and cancel the forged deed. Then a constructive trust claim to trace and recover the sale proceeds. And then the forfeiture clause, doing exactly what my grandfather designed it to do. "What do you want to do?" Brant asked when he finished. I looked out at the Lisbon dark. I thought about how my mother had spent 60 years wanting to be loud and right. I thought about my father in his recliner, dispensing my life like a household budget item. "I don't want to fight them," I said. "I want to file." That was the whole plan. No screaming match, no confrontation in a driveway, just documents in order, doing what documents do. I would let the paper say everything I never had to. Part 6. The Return. I landed 12 days later on a gray Thursday morning. I signed the bridge load certificate, clean, by the book, my name in my hand, and drove straight from the airport to Mill Road without going home first, because I didn't have a home to go to, and I needed to see that with my own eyes. The sign was still there. Weathered now, the red rider faded from weeks of sun. A smaller placard added below with a realtor's name and number. There was a dumpster in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see the kitchen had been gutted. Walter's oak cabinets gone, drywall dust where the sawdust smell used to live. The porch swing was still there. WH 1971, swaying slightly in the autumn breeze like it was saving a seat. I sat in my car across the street for a long time. Then I took the brass key from my ring and walked to the green door and fit it into the lock. It still turned. The lock my grandfather had installed in 1971 still opened for his key. I could have walked right in. I turned the key back, slid it into my coat pocket where it would be safe. Not yet. Walking in now would be the dramatic thing, the thing my mother would do. I was going to do the patient thing, the thing that would actually hold. I drove to a highway hotel, spread my documents across the bed in careful stacks, and called Harold Brant. "I'm home," I said. "I'm ready to file." The Ellis pendants recorded that afternoon. One document, quietly filed, and the entire scheme stopped moving. The house could not be resold, could not be refinanced. My family could not paper over what they had done. My mother found out the way everyone finds out bad news, through a phone call. And then she called me, 3 times in an hour, each voicemail climbing from confusion to anger to that particular wet, performed grief she had used as a tool my entire life. I saved them all. Not to play them. I had promised myself I would win this on documents, not emotion. But because frightened people admit things, and I wanted Brant to hear the timeline in her own words. The forensic document examiner Brant brought in was a woman named Carol Fitch, 17 years of expert testimony in fraud cases, author of 2 papers on questioned handwriting analysis, credentialed by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. She compared the deed signature against 15 genuine samples of mine, and wrote, in language as flat and precise as a ruler, that the questioned signature was not authored by the same hand as the control samples. She then pulled Renee's notary journal, the record a commissioned notary in our state is legally required to maintain, and found that the entry for April 19th was missing entirely. No log, no record of the witnessing Renee had sworn, under official seal, had taken place. The closing file also contained a power of attorney, supposedly signed by me, authorizing my father to act on my behalf, dated while I was in Lisbon, forged too. The first lie had needed a second lie to stand up. Now both were lying on Brant's desk, and Detective Maria Alvarez, 12 years in the county's financial crimes unit, was reading them. She called me personally. "Ms. Myers," she said, "this is about as clean a forgery case as I've seen come through this office. Forged deed, forged power of attorney, false notarization. We're moving forward on all 3. I thanked her and hung up. I sat in the quiet hotel room with everything laid out in neat stacks, the way I arrange drawings before a build, and I did not feel triumphant. I felt steady, like a structure that has been properly loaded and is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Part 7. The family meeting. They thought they were setting a trap. I let them set the table for mine. Sunday came warm and bright. My father was at the grill in his good apron, performing normality. My mother had set out lemonade and a plate of lemon bars, the ones she only makes when she wants something. She had summoned the extended family to witness my reasonableness, 2 aunts, an uncle, a cousin, and in the corner, looking like she hadn't slept in a month, Renee Calloway herself, in a cardigan despite the warm afternoon. And there, at the edge of the patio, hung Walter's swing, 1971, swaying empty in the breeze. I had asked the Prescotts to arrive at 3. They came quietly and stood near the gate, a nurse named Sandra and her husband Daniel, a high school chemistry teacher, holding hands, unsure of what they'd walked into. They had scraped together everything for a first house and spent it on a beautiful, fraudulent lie. They deserved to be there. They deserved to hear it directly. My mother's smile flickered when she saw them. Brina, I invited them, I said. They're part of this. I set my folder on the picnic table, closed, and accepted a glass of lemonade I didn't drink. My father turned from the grill, spatula in hand, that familiar smirk warming up, the expression of a man who has already decided he's won. Glad you came to your senses, he said. I let him think that. The best way to disarm people who are expecting a fight is to look, for one more minute, like the daughter who never causes problems. My mother opened the way she always opens. She stood at the head of the table like a chairwoman and addressed the assembled yard. We're family, she said, voice trembling on cue. Families make hard choices together. Brina has been overseas. She doesn't understand what we were dealing with, and now she's gotten lawyers involved over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated pleasantly. About a house. Daddy's house. And there it was. The line she truly believed. The one she'd been carrying for 60 years. It should have come to me. I only took back what was mine. My father set down his spatula and leaned on the table, wanting the room. He looked at the assembled aunts and uncle and delivered the sentence he will spend the rest of his life regretting. The house paid for their fun, he announced, like a man tipping a generous waiter. Like generosity. Brina's done fine for herself. She didn't need it. We did. Trent, emboldened, added from his lawn chair without looking up. It's just a house. I let all of it land. I let the aunts murmur and the uncle frown and the whole jury my mother had assembled get a thorough look at the family's version of events. Then I opened the folder. The yard went quiet at the small, ordinary sound of a cardboard cover lifting. Not a shout, a folder. Funny, the things that silence a room. I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. I laid the documents on the picnic table one at a time, face up, the way you lay out drawings for a structural review. This is the deed that sold the house, I said. Recorded April 19th. I set down the next page. This is the signature on it. It has my name. I placed a stack of 15 genuine samples beside it. And these are mine. The forensic document examiner, Carol Fitch, certified by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, 17 years of casework, says the one on the deed was written by a different hand. My mother's mouth opened. I kept going, mild as a teacher working through a lesson plan. This is the notary stamp that swears I signed in person in this county on April 19th. Down went the next sheet. This is my passport. I entered Lisbon on March 11th. No exit until June. Down went the badge log. This says I scanned onto a bridge site in Portugal at 6:47 that morning and didn't leave until 7:12 that evening. I looked up at Renee in the corner. She had gone the color of ash. There's no entry in your notary journal for April 19th, Renee. The law says there has to be. There isn't. I folded my hands on the table, quiet and complete. There was also a power of attorney, supposedly signed by me, authorizing Dad to act on my behalf, also forged. So we have 2 forged documents, a false notarization, and a sale of property that none of you ever legally owned. I let that land for a moment. It was never yours. Grandpa put it in an irrevocable trust. I'm the trustee. What you signed as people with no authority over that property at all. How can you sit there? My mother was half rising, voice cracking, lemonade sloshing. We are your family. How are you so calm? The whole yard held its breath. I gave her the only answer I had, the one I'd carried across an ocean and back. Because the house you sold was never yours to sell. I let it sit in the warm air. Then I told them the rest, evenly, the way you read a verdict you didn't write. The forged deed was void. The Prescotts had never legally owned the house and would be made whole by their title insurance and by the people who had defrauded them. The Eli's Pendens was on the record. The quiet title action would return the property to the trust. The sale proceeds were being traced. The county's financial crimes unit had the case. And Walter's forfeiture clause, the one he had written while my mother thought he was just a sentimental old man, had been triggered. You didn't just lose the house you stole, I said. You triggered the mechanism he built to stop you. You disinherited yourselves. The backyard came apart. My mother's tears arrived on schedule. My father stood so fast his chair fell, shouting that I was a snake, that no real daughter does this, that I would regret it. Trent had gone gray. How much do they want back? I spent it. I already spent it. The math of his vacation was catching up with him in real time, and a constructive trust claim does not care that the villa had 2 pools. The aunts who had come to judge me were staring at my mother, recalculating 60 years of stories. And then Renee came off the wall. She grabbed my arm, and her face, for one moment, was the most honest thing in that yard. I I just needed the money, Brina, she whispered. Diane said it was fine. She said the house was really hers. I have 2 kids and I just needed the money. I looked at her. I will not pretend I felt nothing. She was the only one telling the truth, but truth told too late is still a forged seal, and her signature had helped steal my grandfather's house from me. I know, I said quietly. I'm sorry it was you they used. I took my arm back. That was all the mercy I had. It wasn't absolution. I gathered my documents into the folder, squared the edges, and stood. The yelling kept going behind me. It had nothing left to take from me, so I let it. I crossed the lawn to the Prescotts at the gate and told them again, gently, that they would be all right, that Brant would call Monday, that none of this was their doing. Sandra was crying. I'm so sorry about your house, she said, and she meant it, which was more than anyone else in that yard had managed. It was always more than a house, I told her. Then I walked to the sold sign staked in Walter's tomato patch, wrapped both hands around the post, and pulled it out of the ground in one clean motion. Dirt scattered across the grass. I laid it flat in the dumpster on top of my grandfather's broken cabinets. From the patio, the swing creaked. UH 1971, catching the late afternoon light. I took the brass key from my coat pocket, held it the way Walter had held it, loosely, like something you don't need to grip because it isn't going anywhere. I'll see you in court if you'd like, I said to my family, without heat. Otherwise, I'll see myself home. I walked out the gate. I didn't look back to watch them realize the daughter who never caused problems had quietly, completely, and legally won. Epilogue, what Walter built. The legal process took the better part of 2 years, because real justice moves at the speed of paperwork and not television. The quiet title action ended with a judge canceling the forged deed and confirming Mill Road as property of the Walter Hale Trust, with me as trustee. The Prescotts were made whole. Their title insurer covered their losses and pursued my family for the full sale price, joined by Brant's constructive trust claim. Most of Trent's vacation came back out of my parents' retirement account, the Maldives trip, itemized and recovered, rendered absurd in retrospect by the line items. Since Trent himself had nothing in his name, the remainder became a civil judgment that will follow all 3 of them for years. The forfeiture clause held. My mother and my brother each lost the inheritance they had been counting on, close to $40,000 apiece, and it passed where Walter had always intended it to go. The criminal case ran on its own track. My parents each took an early plea to felony forgery rather than risk a trial, and were sentenced to probation, restitution, and the kind of public record that doesn't wash off. Renee lost her notary commission and entered a plea of her own. I asked Detective Alvarez to note in the file that she had cooperated. That was the last mercy I had, and it was more than she had earned. I never spoke to my father again. My mother sent one letter, 4 pages handwritten, that managed to apologize for nothing and ask for financial help on the last page. I did not answer it. People ask if I feel guilty, watching my family come apart. I tell them the truth. I didn't take anything from them. They reached for something that was not theirs, and my grandfather had spent his last clear years bolting it down. I moved into Mill Road that fall. I rebuilt the kitchen myself, mostly with Walter's hand tools and a contractor for the structural work I couldn't certify on my own house without a conflict of interest. I sanded the porch swing down to clean oak and reburned nothing. WH 1971 was right where he left it. It stays. The brass key hangs on a hook by the green door now, where I can see it every time I come home. I test the knob twice out of habit. It holds. They thought a quiet woman was a safe one to rob. They were exactly half right. I was quiet. And I was never, for a single moment, safe to rob. Here is where Walter's money went. The inheritance my mother and brother forfeited. Years ago, sitting with Harold Brant in that paneled office, my grandfather had named a charitable remainder as the forfeiture beneficiary, the Walter Hale Memorial Scholarship for first-generation students entering the trades and engineering. Kids who fix gutters and read levels and earn every door they ever walk through. The first 2 recipients started this year. One wants to build bridges. I keep the brass key on my ring the day I sign each award letter, because a house is just a promise you keep to yourself, and so, it turns out, is a name. One forged signature. One grandfather who saw it coming. One folder that said everything I never had to shout. If this reminded you to read the documents with your name on them, do it this week. The people who love you don't always turn out to be the people who protect you, but sometimes, the ones who are gone, do.